All right, we're going to start with affordable housing, and like we talked about earlier, we will look backwards, what we've accomplished in the last year, and then what staff is anticipating working on in the upcoming year, and then asking council to help us fine-tune that. Are we missing something? Do you want that focus area? This isn't the prioritization we're talking about or the focus areas we're establishing at the end, but within this information, is there something we're missing? Is there something we should fine-tune? Want to make sure we're closely aligned with council. With that, I will hand it off to Marichelle, and here you go. You can have this. Thank you.
Right, good morning. So we're going to start off with an update on our progress on affordable housing. So first I wanted to give you a few updates on some of our prior projects and then coming into this year of a recent project. So Heritage Estates at Edmonds, that was actually approved back in 2022, but the update on that is that they have recently began construction and they anticipate being complete in summer of next year. And then going into 2023, we had two affordable housing projects. One, the Standard of Old Town, which was our first PFC project, and then the other was Round Grove Living, which the City Council approved a letter of support for low-income housing tax credits for that project. So in regards to the PFC project, they are going to start construction this time next year. And they anticipate completing the first phase within the first 3 years and then moving on to the second phase. As for Round Grove Living, they actually did get the awardal of the tax credit award. So they're going to be closing early this year, and then they anticipate construction and then pre-leasing in late 2025, 2026. And the last project here, Heritage Estates at Valley Ridge, you all recently approved that letter of support for low-income housing tax credits, and they're currently going through the process. So they submitted their application, and we're hoping that they'll get an award, and we'll find out this summer, and then they anticipate that they will begin construction in summer of 2025 and complete by December of 2026. And so for a grand total, we have 22 units at 30% AMI, 104 units at 50% AMI, 143 units at 60% AMI, and 248 units at 80% AMI.
So, hello. There it is. Good morning. So beyond the upcoming development, we've been doing a lot of other projects. So we completed the housing strategy plan and the housing toolkit. We also opened and closed a senior rental assistance program. IT was amazing and helped us create a digital application for that. We also launched our minor housing rehab program, which is specific to HVAC. We're really excited that application closes on Monday, and we have 13 applications. So we're really excited to see how that goes. And then we've analyzed our backyard cottage regulations. And then, of course, our property enhancement program, very popular program, is continuing. And then we updated our PEP Plus and code abatement program. So PEP Plus is the one, it's similar to PEP, but they get more reimbursed. So that one has become very successful. It's citywide. And then code abatement we're working on, but that is where we would pay a vendor directly to get a house up in compliance. So what's looking forward? So looking forward, we have a CDBG funded program that's called the Multifamily Accessibility Program. We're going to be looking at our apartment complexes that were built before ADA was a thing, and so they were just grandfathered in, so they are not in compliance with ADA. So we're hoping to bring those complexes into compliance. We're also going to focus on our LIHTC properties with this program. And then for the housing toolkit, staff directed us to focus on preservation and economic mobility. And so part of that economic mobility,
I was going to talk to it.
Okay.
So part of that economic mobility initiatives is obviously going to be your TSTC discussions that we will be bringing to you, I believe, in this next month. That's Texas State Technical College and helping with economic mobility.
So to continue our housing initiatives, we're going to be creating a housing collaborative. This came out of our toolkit, designating a person to lead the housing collaborative. Claire added my name in there. But then we're also going to draft some proposed short-term and long-term goals for this collaborative. We want to make sure that what the collaborative does really makes an impact and really follows our toolkit. So short-term goals will focus on identifying potential members. So we're going to look at lenders, bankers, realtors, people from the housing community to be a part of this to help us initiate those goals. And then finalizing those goals and how we're going to implement them. And then looking forward, increasing the access to public-private programs. We as a city can only do so much, so how do we bring those private partners to the table? And then increasing the number of landlords who accept housing vouchers in Louisville. And then continuing on with our housing toolkit, specifically for homeowner initiatives, we'll look at engaging realtors and lenders to educate our residents on home buyer resources. Tomorrow we will have a class at the Grand. We've partnered with the Greater Louisville Association of Realtors, and they're going to be providing a home buyer class at the Grand. We're going to connect homeowners with local utility and weatherization resources, and then marketing that backyard cottage program and amending the UDC. And then specifically to renters, we're going to be engaging housing navigators. These are people that work for nonprofits like United Way that really engage our landlords to educate them on what housing vouchers means, but then also getting our residents connected to the right places to live. And then identifying local service providers to provide financial counseling, and then continue to utilize the PFC and economic development incentives.
So the last two bullet points there, if capacity allows, to set aside future funding for affordable housing. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit more about potential public facility corporation projects and kind of talk through some of the proposed projects that have come to us in the last year, some of the issues that we have seen with some of those projects, and then get some direction from you all. So one of the first things that Ashley and I talk to developers about when we meet is that we want to focus on substantial rehabilitation projects because we have aging multifamily and we want to prioritize those types of properties. However, we have not been getting those types of proposals. And so one of the things that we're trying to think through different ways in which we can get those to come to the table. So we did go through a process where we will, sometimes a developer will ask, well, can you give us examples? And we will send examples, not that those properties are up for sale, but these are the type of properties that we may want you to look at amongst others, just anything that is substantial rehabilitation that is going to help our aging multifamily. So another subset of properties that have come to us are properties for acquisition that are currently there that do not need substantial rehabilitation. And one of the things that the new legislation did was it provided that you had to renovate the property by providing 15% of the total gross price of the property into repair and rehab. Or if you did not do that, you had to provide additional affordable units. So you had to provide 40% at 80% AMI and 25% at 60% AMI. So that gives you more affordable units, 65%, and with 35% being market, but they're not meeting the renovation requirement. And for some of those properties, that's okay because they might not need it. However, the problem that we've identified is that the rents for the 80% AMI that they're proposing are more than the current market rents. That was our initial feedback as well. So I think it's a matter of them trying to make the numbers work. So, and we've gone back to them in those instances and said, hey, we don't want to increase rents. We don't want to simply just maintain the current market rents. We want to provide affordable housing now to our residents. So that's the issue that we faced with some of these acquisition projects. Lastly, we've also been talking to properties that are about to come off of their affordability. So they are currently low-income housing tax credit properties, and they're about to fall off, and that means that that property can then become market rate. And so one of the things that Ashley's team has been doing is been reaching out to some of those, say, hey, are you interested in potentially doing a PFC project or partnering with the city to keep this property affordable? So the one instance in which we have gotten some interest in utilizing the PFC or other ways of keeping the property affordable, they came to us, and the property is, for instance, currently 60% AMI across the board. But with the PFC project, what they're proposing was 60%, 80% in market rate. So that means that they're not keeping the current level of affordability across the board. They're wanting to increase that a little bit. And our initial response to them was, we want you to keep it at 60%. If we're going to participate as a city, we would like to see you keep it at 60% AMI across the board, not increase the rents at all.
Mayor Sheila?
Yes.
How many of those that are about to roll off the tax credit, the properties that are about to roll off, how many of them are senior housing?
So there's only 2 LIHTC properties that are senior, and it's the 2 evergreens that we have. Of the 6 low-income housing tax credit current complexes we have, there's only the 2 evergreens.
Are they about to roll off? I think
And
is the
they're about
question.
to roll off?
One is, I can get you the exact year, I'm not remembering off the top of my head right now, but the evergreen at Louisville.
In Arm Garden Ridge?
Yes.
Or the one, there's
Correct.
another one?
Not Vista
Mont-
Ridge, but the other one is about to roll off, I think in 25.
And
we-
we're already having evictions there under tax credits.
We've been in communication with the owners of Evergreen to talk about keeping them affordable.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing I wanted to mention is new construction. So we get calls all the time wanting to do new construction projects, and so far there just hasn't been a project that has been in the right area and providing the right amount of affordability. So that's the reason why you haven't seen any new construction project come to you all either. And so I know I said a lot, and I gave a lot of examples, so I want to stop here and get just some more feedback from you all on what you want us to prioritize and if we're moving in the right direction.
Council? I'd say, first of all, that evergreen thing is concerning. So that's a big one right off the bat. First of all, I appreciate the fact you guys are looking at this really at a global level. I mean, you're looking at this at all different angles. It's great to see that we've got at least 22 to 30%. Hopefully we can get more than that, but even anything below 50 is a win-win. So I can't say a whole lot because it's already there. So.
As we think about the recap, I want to take the opportunity to thank Nancy Sansom's group. They've just been, and we use this word with love, relentless in the meetings that they attend and the efforts that they put forth. It's a great example of how, even if you're not on a board, a commission, something like that, you can still impact where you live in the city and how our city presents. She's done a great job with that. I do have a question, though, as we think about going forward. I'm a numbers guy, and I like to know what success is. So is there a percentage of units that we consider to be the mark that we're trying to get to? Is it 20%? Is it 10%? How do we know when we've hit a good goal for affordable housing in the Louisville area? And you don't have to answer the question now. That's just a thought going forward. If you have an answer, great.
I don't have an exact number, but our housing strategy plan and toolkit has some numbers in there, so I can definitely get those numbers to you. Yeah.
To further up on that, so if you remember when we finished the housing plan and the toolkit, it wasn't a goal setting, but it was where to be able to achieve with the growth in our population, where it's going, what we needed to do and to prioritize, right? So a lot of it was LIHTC, some of it was putting funding aside in a budget. I will tell you, when we go through this whole budget discussion or the economic impact discussion, you're going to see this is going to be a tight year for us, right? So I didn't want to couch right now we were going, but we are going to look at if we can put money aside. The ideal thing is if we can find a developer who wants to do these rehab projects, we're like, hey, we have money to help you fill that gap. Right now we're trying to play matchmaker with those developers and those landowners, and sometimes they don't align perfectly. But again, with council, the direction that was given at the end of that discussion with the housing study was you wanted us to focus on preservation, which is the evergreen situation, but you also wanted us to do economic mobility. So that really will be a shift, I think, in this upcoming year, if that's something that still is of interest to council, is focusing on that preservation, which I'm hearing that is something you guys are still concerned about, especially with evergreen falling off, but also focusing on the economic mobility component.
That's great. I kind of forgot about the economic mobility part, so that's great. How do you lift people out of the need for the affordable housing? The other thing that I'd love to see is how do we compare to our benchmark cities? So when we look at the Carrolltons, the Highland Villages, the other 11 or 12 benchmark cities, how are we comparing our efforts to them? Just something I'm curious about.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to add one thing. We've done all we can do. We send the smoke signals up to the county and the state. We also need to work on HUD and our federal partners, because this is not just a Louisville issue, it's everywhere, and I think the benchmarking will be good to see where everyone is ahead or maybe not. But we need to put a focus on, we need help with this, because we've done everything we can trying to help our seniors, but we have to do that, and I don't think that's a partisan issue. No one wants to see someone's grandmother or grandfather on the street because they can't afford a house or an apartment. So that's just one thing I just want to say. I know we have like NLC who lobbies Congress, but we need to get their focus and get their head turned toward this issue before it becomes catastrophic.
I was just going to say I appreciate the conversation about focusing on trying to figure out a way to get some of these rehab, because we do have a lot of aging multifamily complexes, whether they're affordable or not, at least designated as affordable units or not, below market rate units. We have a lot that is kind of run down, and I think a lot of times when people hear the term affordable housing, they associate it with something that's run down and not meeting code. I do know that was it a year or two ago that we looked at, we revised the multifamily inspection program to include, so more of these units are going to be getting inspected, and I'm hoping that that is uncovering some more things that really kind of help push the focus on the rehab forward, because the landlords are going to be getting away with less than they have been able to in the past. But I would encourage us to continue to figure out, just as you're already getting into, how do we help move along the rehab and focus on the rehab over the new builds. I do think some new builds are necessary. I'm really excited about the one here in Old Town, but let's keep pushing forward on rehab, figuring out what the barriers are, because I realize for the developer, it is way easier to go build something new than it is to get into something that's already existing and figure out how to fix it up. So with that, I would say I want to focus on quality, affordable housing, and not just when it's built, but I don't know if there's anything that we could do as far as long-term management goes, because I think that really is a key factor in how these multifamily complexes age, is how they're managed. And so I don't know if there's any tools that we have that would be able to help with some of that. But if there's anything we could do, that would be great.
I have a concern. like what everybody else does. First of all, I have to say, Patrick, Highland Village doesn't believe in multifamily, so we can't use them as a benchmark. The AMI that came out in the census, we're in a district that is unrealistic. It's an unrealistic AMI for our residents here. They only wish that was their AMI, and which is complicating things a great deal. And I would like to see if there is some way, tongue-in-cheek, that we could get information on how we can be realigned. It may be 2049 before they look at it, but somebody needs to look at it.
So it sounds like an advocacy.
It does. I mean, the AMI that's set, you can get, 30, 40, whatever. It's unrealistic to us.
So the current AMI is the area median income is 105,600.
We are in the Dallas area metro, so
Right.
that's why we get included
And it
in
pulls in a lot of, You understand what I'm, okay.
Yeah, and like Councilmember Jones said, it's really going to be at the HUD level. It's really gonna be, so.
And one of the things with that is, I don't think we can, I've talked to some people that I know that work for the feds. I don't think we can change the getting out of the Dallas area because our income in Denton County would be different. But I would definitely like to ask them if they could put in something for seniors where they receive, Social Security, because their increases don't match that of someone who's working a job. That may be something, that may be a lighter lift, instead of 2049, maybe 2046.
Well, it would be amazing, wouldn't it?
But I mean, something that they need to consider now is that that revenue, that income that people are receiving is not even aligned with the job market, and maybe that's something that we can work on.
Maybe we can put a legislation together, you and I, across the aisle, to where the seniors' Social Security has to be so much of the AMI.
Yeah.
But they would get a double raise.
I will say a good advocate is the United Way of Denton County. So out of their Workforce Solutions leadership team, they're creating a senior working group. So hopefully that group will be able to be a good advocate for that. I know that they have a donor that is looking at providing funding to continue the senior rental assistance across the county, not just here in Louisville. So hopefully that'll be but again, like our senior rental assistance, it was a Band-Aid. So hopefully that advocacy group can really bring those voices up further than just the county level.
Thank you. Actually, we had our first senior work group meeting yesterday at Evergreen.
Oh, nice.
With Dr. Sansom. And one of the things that stuck out to me when we were talking there was there's so much involved. There's so many different topics that cause issues, and yes, we need to concentrate on getting the rehab and keeping the affordable housing that we do have. So it was a very interesting meeting yesterday.
I had an additional thought that I didn't mention before. I think the most affordable housing is for people to stay where they are, right? So I don't know what we could do on the single-family residential side, but if there's a toolbox or a kit, and we do have a lot of things that would help residents that are living in a single-family home that is, has some code violations that can help them, renovate some of those things. I do think that there's probably a lot of benefit to getting the word out. I know we've pushed a lot, but look at new ways. How do we keep pushing that information out? Because there's still just a lot of people who don't know about it, or some misconceptions, especially when we change things a little bit. Maybe they knew about it before and they were like, well, I don't qualify maybe they do qualify now and they just don't know that they qualify now. So just pushing it out regularly. But also, is there anything else that we might be able to do?
There's definitely some programs at a regional level. I pointed out like a weatherization, those kind of programs that will reinforce the house, like new windows, things like that, to bring energy costs down so that they can put funding towards other pieces of their home. Our PET program is very popular, but also the PET Plus program. When those changes were made, we did a mailer out to every single house in the city of Louisville that was built before 1980. So that really generated that education, but education is so important, and so we can send out a flyer, but then somebody missed it or something. So I definitely agree that education is needs to be continuous.
Yes, I will say, as an owner of a home that was built before 1980, I did get that. I think I've mentioned this before. We're in an economy where everything is astronomically expensive. So I think maybe there's probably a lot of people that got that thought, well, that's great, but it's out of my reach right now. So I just think we probably need to, what we did with that was great. We need to do it again and again and again.
I do want to take a quick opportunity to punctuate a point here, because I think somebody brought up, when you think of affordable housing, that can conjure up warehousing of people in dense spaces. What the projects that we looked at for 2023 and going into 2024, these are not that. These are homes for families. These are units that are in communities that are shared with people that are paying full rent.
Right.
And there is no designation of these are the cheaper ones, these are the more expensive ones. It's all the same. It's all the same pool. So I wanted to make sure we punctuate that for anybody who might be listening. And then two, going back, Councilwoman Kay, thank you for that clarification point. I'm still very interested in benchmarking. If we have communities that aren't pulling their weight for part of the broader community, I think it's important to call them at, show who's putting the effort forward. So, but thank you for that reminder, Councilwoman Kay. Appreciate that.
And last thing I'll say, I want to thank staff for the work that you guys have done. It's been a lot, and I want to thank our partners, especially United Way of Denton County, because Gary Henderson stepped up in a very big way, and the county as well has helped us do this. So I just want to make sure we're giving our kudos.
Yeah, our friends at CCA, all those, there's the whole list of them, so awesome. Just going to put a couple of flourishes on this, if you don't mind. Don't know what kind of engagement we've had with the Apartment Association of Greater Dallas, but they may be a resource.
I have not reached out to them. But
Okay, I think they may be a resource, at least for getting feedback on what the community can do. Maybe there's other developers that they've worked with across their portfolios, something there. I think to Councilmember Kelly's point, one thing that I really would help is to take a look at the breakout of our folks that are using affordable housing. So the percentages of those that are seniors, the percentage of those that are maybe starter families, just their first jobs that just don't have the income, so this is a way for them to get there. Percentage that are they're ADA, folks that maybe have some living challenges that they use this. So I think it is, this country has gotten really, really picky about who gets to live where. And I don't think they realize that it's their mom and dad. I am regularly talked to by residents as I roam the streets of Louisville that, hey, we wanted to stay in Flower Mound, but we couldn't. There was nothing for us to downsize into. We wanted to stay in Highland Village, but we couldn't, and our kids can't live here. And so we become a home for those folks, and it's wonderful. It really is. And so, to the what communities, who's lifting their weight, communities are missing out because they have this idea of what affordable housing is or was. It is not that, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that it's educated and people understand that this is mom and dad. More often mom than dad, because y'all women just outlive the heck out of us, and I have some suspicions about that. The other thing I would like to maybe have a conversation on, and maybe we could do this as a workshop, Judge Curbo has got some really good information on evictions and eviction rates. I'd like to kind of have a history of how that's gone, where we are, where we're headed. That not only is it interesting from just a total economics standpoint, but I think it also can be a leading indicator of where we're headed. So would like to maybe get some context on that.
Our housing analysis analyzed our eviction rate, and we had a very low eviction rate. I
Right.
can get you that, and then we can get some updated numbers for you as well.
Awesome.
What was I know that we got it into in 2023, but the data wasn't 2023.
It was 2017 to 2021 ACS data.
Which has greatly changed, and in part of the eviction rate or the rental rates is there's a lot of families now and young families that are starting that can no longer afford Louisville,
Right.
and they're going north, and part of that, quite frankly, is when you buy a house for $239,000 and now it's $800,000 on the tax rolls. And the landlords that own those, of course, they're having to pay all the taxes, and everything is just going up. So, a stone in a pond doesn't just sink, it ripples into everything. So, we have to do the 360 view on it, because everything has an impact.
Got some direction? It
Yes.
sounds like it.
Yes. Thank
However, I have one question.
Yeah.
So the acquisition projects, the ones that I mentioned, if they don't renovate, would go up to 65% affordable and about 35% market rate. That could provide affordable housing relatively now. If the rents work out and they're actually reducing the rents instead of increasing them, are those the type of projects that you all would be open to seeing, or would you want us to focus just more on the substantial rehab?
I think what helps me the most, just being kind of data-driven as I am, is when we had the assessments on Ohala and it showed the return to our residents in rent rates. I think that number is more important to me than the percentages. I mean, they're important. The percentages are important, but if that little change creates a really massive drop-off, then no, I don't want that. But if it continues to keep a comparable, competitive return to our residents, I think of it a lot like an economic development project, right? I mean, if a business brings in a percentage of sales tax that we're like, okay, this is worth doing this for because we net out ahead, I'm in a very similar mindset when we talk about these developments, whether it's the redevelopment or new development. I'd much rather see that analysis if we can get it.
I would also like to say that I would be open to the discussion about it. I would want to see if we're going to work a deal where rehab is off the table. I want to see what the existing condition is.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, just an assessment of what the existing condition is. Do we have any ADA issues? Because I do feel like those probably are not things that I would really want to not address. This would be our chance to address it.
Right, it would have to go through a needs assessment, and it would also have to go through a form of underwriting as well.
Also on that is, I don't want to be untrusting to some of our developers and stuff like that, but it is, how long are we going to hold them to keeping the rents? Is it going to be 2 years and then they go back up and they've done nothing to the property and now it's falling apart? No, we have to really look at the situation and make sure that there's accountability processes in there big time.
Right, the agreement would require that as well as annual compliance.
I think that whether you say 60, 65, whatever it is, I think at the end of the day, looking at the data and if their rents are going to go down and it's going to be a help, I think that's a win-win. But also we need to see what the details are and all that. But
Right.
I think every senior is just looking at the bottom line. They're looking at what is my rent.
Right?
I just had one thing. So I was real big on the rehab, but in school, I'm in school with a whole bunch of real estate developers, and so I pull them aside and really drive them crazy. And they tell me about kind of what Kristen was saying. It's easier to start with a clean slate, and so it's not really viable. But I would love for us to, if we can, at some point, have conversations with those folks to kind of see what's viable, what's not, and maybe we can come up with something. I mean, it's not something that I don't think needs to be a priority, but along the way, because we have a lot of older apartment complexes, that something's going to have to happen. I'm not sure what the direction is, and I don't think that should be priority. I think the priority should be whatever we can get done first, do that first, but I think that should be on the back burner.
That could be part of our housing collaborative, is having that conversation with that group and then seeing what other incentives are out there that we could be bringing to the table for them.
Yeah, I kind of wrote down the same kind of thing as how do we entice these developers to do the rehab? What do we have to do to make this a good project for them? I think that's where we get a deep dive into that, and then I think you'll probably get some developers to come in and do these projects.
We've talked about potentially doing a request for proposals, and if there is room in the budget, including an incentive package that could help make that happen and help more rehabilitation projects happen.
So just to clarify, what Councilmember Jones just said is what I tried to say, but you said it much better, so I appreciate that. And just so we're clear, when I mention the inspection program, if we're seeing data from the inspection program that is showing a lot of violations, that, can we go to them and initiate a conversation saying, hey, we see you've got a lot of code violations. Let's have a discussion and see where it goes.
Yeah, our multifamily inspectors have built strong relationships with the managers at all the complexes, and so anytime a developer comes to us with a potential project that is an existing building, I immediately go to them and ask them and have that conversation with our inspectors before we come back to the developer to see if we even want to move forward with it. So I definitely think that's an opportunity through our multifamily inspectors to have those conversations.
Is there a way that we can work with the existing ownership?
Yes.
Rather than just a developer that would come in and try to purchase and upgrade it? What communication do we have with existing owners?
Yeah, and we've had some of those conversations. It's really interesting. You find developers are in one of two buckets. So you have people who are able to work in the affordable housing realm, and you have those that do not. And so it's, if the developer or the owner, they're not developers, but the owners aren't in that realm of affordable housing and operating that way, many times they're like, I don't even want to touch that. So it's a lot of time, I mean, you can have those conversations, but a lot of times it's getting that property to sell to someone who is comfortable in that environment. I wish it weren't like that, but that's what we keep finding over and over again.
So, as an example, there is property that we reached out to and offered to work together in order to continue to make it affordable and then also rehab. And they're open to it, but again, these are the owners that haven't done necessarily a PFC project and had multiple meetings just talking through what it was and how they can do it. They can, in this particular instance, they are good, they're managing the property well. And so it's not something as if, we would say, we would rather or potentially look into selling it to someone else to go through that process. And we said, hey, if you want to stay in the game, we'll work with you all directly and we'll help you guys through the process and we can make it happen. And so they said, well, let us think about it. We're going to talk internally. It may be something that we do ourselves, but it may be something that we may have someone else do. Can you send me potentially folks that are in this realm that we could potentially work with? And so that has been going on for maybe the last year, and they're just getting them engaged and pushing them to that point. We're still working through that, but it's not an easy process or conversation because they're just not in that space most of the time.
I think that's great that we can the city can be a resource on both sides and connect the parties that need to be connected, and it may take time, but I think we're headed the right direction.